The polished marble floors of the Grandeur Hotel gleamed, reflecting the opulent chandeliers above. But in the dim, utilitarian back-of-house hallway, Elena Rodriguez pushed a heavy cleaning cart, her shoulders aching, silently reciting, "Hard work pays off." Up front, where chandeliers dripped crystal and velvet sofas invited repose, Mr. Thorne glided through the lobby, a symphony of practiced smiles and polished charm. "A pleasure, Mr. Henderson. Do enjoy your stay," he purred, his voice a smooth balm, his eyes already scanning for his next opportunity to impress. Yet, the moment the executive office door clicked shut behind him, the veneer cracked with startling speed. "Johnson, that report should have been on my desk an hour ago. Are you utterly incompetent, or merely lazy?" he barked, his voice a whip crack that echoed off the soundproofed walls, the lingering scent of his expensive cologne unable to mask the sudden sourness in the air. Elena moved through Suite 704 with the quiet precision of a surgeon, every movement economical, every surface gleaming under her touch. The scent of expensive perfume still lingered, a ghost of luxury that felt miles away from her reality. She exchanged a tired, knowing glance with Isabella, an older colleague whose face was a map of similar long days and unseen struggles. "Patience, mija," Isabella whispered in Spanish, seeing Elena's fleeting grimace as she scrubbed a stubborn ring from a bathtub, her hands red from the harsh chemicals. Just then, Mr. Thorne strode past, his crisp suit rustling with an air of self-importance, his gaze sweeping over them like an icy wind. "Efficiency, ladies, efficiency," he drawled, not quite looking at them, but the dismissal in his tone was unmistakable, leaving a lingering sting. Elena felt a familiar clenching in her gut, a quiet frustration simmering beneath her practiced smile. At the staff entrance, a young man, perhaps in his mid-20s, adjusted the slightly too large Bellhop uniform, a subtle unease flickering in his keen eyes. This was Marcus Vance, owner Eleanor Vance's son, but today he was just Mark, a new recruit, tasked with observing the hotel's pulse from the ground up. He watched the organized chaos of the back of house, the hurried whispers, the clatter of dishes, the sharp scent of industrial cleaner, a stark contrast to the elegant facade he'd just walked through moments before. He noticed Mr. Thorne, laughing boisterously with a favored valet, then turning with a curt, almost disdainful nod to a cleaning staff member passing by, her shoulders slumping just a fraction. Interesting, Marcus thought, the word echoing in his mind. The mask slips easily when no one important is watching. He felt a familiar surge of analytical curiosity, the first spark of his mission igniting. Later that evening, the fluorescent hum of a night school classroom replaced the hotel's opulent silence, a different kind of ambition filling the air. Elena sat hunched over a worn notebook, her pen scratching diligently. The day's aches momentarily forgotten. "The cat is on the mat," she pronounced softly, her brow furrowed in concentration, the unfamiliar sounds feeling heavy on her tongue. English was a puzzle, a stubborn lock she was determined to pick, each correct pronunciation a small, hard-won victory. It was a quiet promise to herself, a defiant whisper that the exhaustion of the hotel was not her only future. She would learn. She would rise. Her dreams, though distant, felt tangible in the quiet determination of her heart. The late afternoon sun slanted through the Bellhop station windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Marcus, still in his slightly too stiff Bellhop uniform, meticulously sorted through the day's pooled tips. Bills and coins lay scattered on the counter, but as he tallied his share, a knot began to tighten in his stomach. It felt lighter. He'd meticulously tracked the shifts, the number of bags carried, the typical guest generosity. The math wasn't adding up. He watched a seasoned bellhop, a man named Leo, count his own pile with a practiced, weary sigh. "Slow day, huh, Mark?" Leo muttered, stuffing the meager sum into his pocket. Marcus nodded, but his eyes darted to the tip log, a shared ledger where each bellhop recorded their contributions. He'd noticed a consistent pattern over the last few days. Payouts were always a little less than expected, a whisper of discrepancy that tickled the edges of his mind. It wasn't a fluke. Something was off about the tips. Was it just a mistake, or something more sinister? In the cramped, fluorescent-lit cleaning staff break room, Elena unzipped her small, worn pouch, her shoulders aching from another relentless shift. Inside, nestled among a few loose coins, was her personal tip jar, an old, repurposed jam jar. Guests, particularly those with a keen eye for exceptional service, sometimes left her a little something directly. She'd made a habit of checking it each evening, a small ritual of hope. Today, her fingers brushed the bottom much too quickly. It was unusually light. Asterisk. Que raro asterisk, she murmured to herself, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. She tried to dismiss it, telling herself perhaps the guests were simply less generous today. But a flicker of worry, cold and unwelcome, crossed her face. This wasn't the first time. Even the smallest tips disappear. Is it bad luck? Or a pattern? The main lobby of the Grandeur Hotel buzzed with the controlled chaos of a busy checkout period. Guests, adorned in designer clothes, navigated gleaming marble floors, their laughter echoing softly. Mr. Thorne, impeccably dressed, glided through the crowd, a practiced smile plastered on his face. He spotted Elena near a row of ornate potted palms, wiping a smudge from a silver planter. He paused, his smile dissolving into a thin, critical line. "Elena," he called, his voice carrying just enough to draw the attention of a nearby departing couple. "Is that the best you can do? These planters are meant to gleam, not merely exist." Elena flinched, her hand still. "Lo siento, señor," she mumbled, her cheeks burning, her gaze fixed on the floor. Marcus, assisting a guest with luggage nearby, observed the interaction. Mr. Thorne's words, sharp and cutting, were a subtle power play, designed to make Elena feel small. He watched Elena's quiet endurance, her back straightening almost imperceptibly as she resumed scrubbing, a controlled expression on her face. The manager's cruel words cut deep. Is this just tough management or something worse? Later that morning, Marcus found himself near the staff schedule board, ostensibly checking his shifts. He watched as Mr. Thorne strode past, nodding approvingly at David, a bellhop known for his boisterous charm, who had clearly forgotten to restock the lobby's complimentary water bottles. "Good work, David," Thorne said, a clap on the shoulder. Moments later, Elena walked by, pushing her cart. Thorne's eyes narrowed. He stopped her, pointing a finger at a barely perceptible smudge on a polished railing she'd just cleaned. "Elena, per favor," he sighed dramatically. "Attention to detail. Is this what we pay you for?" "Carelessness costs this hotel its reputation." Elena's shoulders slumped. Marcus saw the double standard, the stark favoritism that permeated Thorne's management style. It wasn't just criticism. It was targeted, a constant chipping away at the most vulnerable. Favoritism and cruelty. The manager's true colors are starting to show. The scent of stale coffee hung heavy in the cleaning staff break room. Elena leaned against the chipped counter, cradling a steaming mug. Isabella, her older colleague, sat beside her, her worn hands wrapped around her own cup. They exchanged tired but understanding glances, a silent language spoken between those who shared the burden of unseen labor. "Animo, hija," Isabella murmured gently, her voice soft in Spanish. "You work hard. That is what truly matters." Elena offered a small, weary smile, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. It was a brief respite, a quiet affirmation that, despite the challenges, they were not entirely alone. In the face of adversity, small acts of kindness can make all the difference. The Grandeur Hotel buzzed with its usual symphony of luxury and labor. Marcus, playing the part of Mark, the bellhop in training, moved through its hidden arteries with a casual ease that belied his sharp focus. He knew his role wasn't just to carry bags. It was to observe, to listen. In the employee lounge, during a brief lull, he sidled up to an older bellhop, a man named Frank, with weary eyes and a perpetually slumped posture. "Hey, Frank," Marcus began, feigning a youthful confusion. "So about these tips, how exactly does the pooling work? It feels a little opaque, you know?" Frank sighed, rubbing his temples. "Opaque is one word for it, kid. Management takes their cut, then we get what's left. It's always been that way." Later, in the musty supply closet, Marcus struck up a conversation with a janitorial staff member, a quiet woman named Marta. "It's wild how much stuff a hotel goes through, right?" he offered, picking up a bottle of industrial cleaner. "Must be ordering constantly." Marta shrugged, her gaze distant. "We order, but what we get, sometimes it feels like less. Like the good stuff just vanishes." Marcus nodded, a casual smile fixed on his face, but inside, a knot of suspicion tightened. He was collecting whispers, not just words. By the end of her shift, Elena's feet ached, a familiar protest against the long hours. She dragged herself to the cleaning staff break room, her mind still replaying the day's tasks. In the quiet corner, she reached for her small, unassuming ceramic jar, a gift from Isabella, where she kept the few direct tips guests sometimes left for her. She had made a point to remember the 2 crisp $5 bills from Mrs. Henderson in room 407. Her fingers dipped inside, retrieving a handful of crumpled singles and a few coins. She counted them slowly, her brow furrowing. $10 should have been there at least. But there was only 7. A wave of familiar despair washed over her, chilling her exhaustion. It wasn't the first time. A flicker of anger, hot and fleeting, ignited deep within her. It wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. Someone was taking from her, again. The main lobby, usually a paragon of hushed efficiency, was momentarily disrupted by a guest's agitated voice. Mr. Thorne, ever the picture of practiced composure, glided from his office towards the front desk. A red-faced woman in a fur coat was explaining, rather loudly, that a sentimental antique brooch had gone missing from her travel case, supposedly left in the hotel's lost and found. Mr. Thorne offered a saccharine smile, laced with a barely perceptible condescension. "My dear madam, are you quite certain you didn't misplace it yourself? Our lost and found is meticulously managed." Perhaps a momentary lapse of memory. He dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, a glib assurance, and a forced chuckle, clearly more interested in ending the conversation than investigating the complaint. The guest, deflated and frustrated, retreated, leaving Mr. Thorne with a self-satisfied smirk. To an ethical observer, his casual negligence was alarming. The Bellhop locker room, after the evening rush, was usually empty, smelling of stale uniforms and cheap cologne. Marcus, feigning a search for a misplaced tie clip, re-entered the dim space. He heard a rustling sound from the far end near the communal tip container, a locked metal box where all pooled Bellhop tips were supposed to be deposited. Peeking around a row of lockers, his eyes widened. Mr. Thorne, his usually pristine suit jacket slightly askew, was hunched over the container, a handful of bills clutched in his hand. He quickly, furtively, stuffed the cash into his inner jacket pocket. The glint of a $50 bill caught the dim light. Mr. Thorne froze, sensing a presence, and spun around, his face pale. "Mark!" "Just making sure everything's accounted for," he stammered, his hand flying to button his jacket. Marcus, heart hammering, forced a casual smile. "Oh, sorry, Mr. Thorne. Just looking for my clip. Didn't mean to interrupt." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken accusation, a cold confirmation of Marcus's worst fears. Back in his small temporary staff quarters, the fluorescent hum of the hotel was the only sound. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, the image of Mr. Thorne's furtive movements replaying in his mind. The glint of the $50 bill. The stammered excuse. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was a fact. The scale of the manager's corruption was far greater than mere mismanagement or a few overlooked mistakes. This was deliberate, calculated theft, siphoning money from the pockets of hardworking staff. A cold, hard resolve settled in Marcus's chest. His father had built this hotel on integrity. His mother maintained that legacy. He would not let it be defiled by a man like Mr. Thorne. The truth had found its weight, and now, Marcus knew, it was his responsibility to bring it into the light. The Grandeur Hotel, usually a hive of activity, slept in a hushed stillness that late night. Only the soft hum of the server racks and the faint glow from Marcus Vance's screen broke the silence in an empty back office. Marcus, no longer Mark the Bellhop, but Marcus the determined heir, sat hunched over a keyboard. He had used an old, rarely changed login, a remnant from his father's tenure, to slip into the hotel's digital accounting system. His fingers flew across the keys, pulling up Bellhop tip distribution reports, then cross-referencing them against daily revenue logs and payroll records. The numbers swam before his eyes, a meticulous dance of figures. But as he compared each entry, a pattern emerged, subtle at first, then glaringly obvious. Consistent discrepancies. Small amounts, always missing from the pooled tips, never quite adding up to what the revenue indicated. His jaw tightened. The numbers, cold and impartial, were starting to tell a damning story. Mid-morning in the cleaning supply closet, the air was thick with the faint scent of disinfectant and a heavier one of frustration. Elena Rodriguez sighed, pushing aside a near-empty bottle of all-purpose cleaner. "Cada vez menos," she murmured to Isabella, gesturing to the sparse shelves. Less and less each time. Isabella, her face etched with years of quiet endurance, nodded, her gaze sweeping over the worn-out brushes and frayed cloths. "It's been like this, Chiquita. They say, budget cuts, but the hotel is full, always full." She sighed, a sound that carried the weight of countless unspoken complaints. "The Staff Appreciation Fund, they talk about for supplies? I think it appreciates someone else's pocket." Elena's brow furrowed. It wasn't just tips disappearing. Even the tools of their trade were being snatched away, making their already arduous work even harder. Later that night, Marcus was back in the empty office, the screen his only companion. The initial discrepancies he'd found had opened a floodgate. He delved deeper, tracing the flow of funds, cross-referencing digital tip distribution logs with bank transfers. What he found was not a few isolated errors, but a sophisticated, consistent pattern of adjustments. Every week, small percentages were siphoned off, always diverting into accounts subtly linked to Mr. Thorne. It was a digital ghost, a phantom tax on the hard work of the staff. This wasn't random, not a mistake. This was a meticulously planned, ongoing scheme. A cold anger settled in Marcus's chest. The manager wasn't just cruel. He was a calculating thief, systematically stealing from those who earned every penny. The main lobby, usually a place of quiet luxury, suddenly became a stage for Mr. Thorne's cruelty. Elena, wiping down a gleaming marble railing, paused for a moment to shift her heavy cart. "Rodriguez!" Thorne's voice boomed, sharp enough to make a few guests turn their heads. "Is that really the best you can do?" A misplaced towel in room 402. Unacceptable. This is the Grandeur, not some roadside motel. He made a show of it, his eyes raking over Elena, making her feel minuscule. Elena mumbled an apology, her cheeks burning, shrinking into her uniform. Nearby, assisting a guest with their luggage, Marcus's hands tightened on the bellhop cart. He watched Elena's humiliation, the way she endured the public dressing down with silent dignity. Thorne wasn't just correcting a mistake. He was asserting dominance, using Elena as a convenient scapegoat. Marcus's eyes narrowed, a controlled fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. Back in his cramped staff quarters, late into the night, Marcus reviewed his growing collection of evidence. Notes, screenshots, printouts of financial records, all laid out across his small desk. He saw the undeniable pattern now, the consistent underpayments, the deliberate shortchanging of the bellhops and cleaning crew. It wasn't just about money, though that was a significant part of it. It was about a pervasive culture of exploitation, built on the backs of hard-working individuals like Elena. Mr. Thorne wasn't just a corrupt manager, he was a predator, systematically preying on the vulnerable. Marcus nodded grimly. The weight of his discovery was heavy, but so was his resolve. This wasn't just a job for him anymore. It was a mission. They can't even get soap. The manager's greed is hurting everyone. Elena, usually a shadow in the opulent halls, stood before Mr. Thorne's imposing desk, her hands clasped tight. The office, a stark contrast to the hotel's grandeur, was immaculate, but the air felt heavy, oppressive. She swallowed, summoning every ounce of courage. "Mr. Thorne, sir," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, the English words feeling clumsy on her tongue. "The cleaning supplies, they are very low. We need more soap, more disinfectant, For the rooms. Mr. Thorne, leaning back in his plush leather chair, didn't even glance up from his tablet. He merely waved a dismissive hand, a cold, elegant gesture. Budget cuts, Elena. You and your crew just need to be more efficient. Or perhaps less wasteful. This isn't a charity. His tone dripped with contempt, a silent accusation that made Elena's cheeks burn. She felt a familiar knot of frustration tighten in her stomach, the quiet anger simmering beneath her skin. She was dismissed. A hotel charity, a noble cause, or another opportunity for corruption. Later that evening, after a long shift, Marcus found himself lingering near the employee bulletin board, a kaleidoscope of notices and schedules. His eyes, ever observant, landed on a brightly colored flyer. The Grandeur gives back, donating unused guest toiletries to local shelters. A picture of smiling hotel staff, Thorne, conspicuously absent, adorned the top. Marcus's thoughtful expression deepened. Unused toiletries. Hotels often had an abundance, especially luxury ones. But if the cleaning crew was short on their dear basic supplies, something didn't add up. The flyer, meant to inspire, now whispered a new, unsettling question in his mind. Was this noble cause another opportunity for corruption? They're forced to cut corners, risking their jobs to do their jobs. This can't go on. In the sterile, dimly lit cleaning supply closet, the air hung thick with the faint scent of diluted chemicals. Elena and Isabella huddled over a bucket, their faces etched with weariness. "This is barely enough, Isabella," Elena murmured in Spanish, pouring a capful of cleaner into a gallon of water. "The rooms will not be truly clean. And the guests, they notice." Isabella, her hands calloused from years of scrubbing, nodded grimly as she wrung out a frayed cloth, its fibers thin and worn. "We do what we can, Hija. But if the rooms are not perfect, it is our fault, no? Our jobs." Elena's brow furrowed, a wave of anxiety washing over her. The constant pressure, the impossible standards, all because of something as basic as soap. It felt like a deliberate act, designed to make them fail. "Caught on camera! The manager is stealing from the needy. This is the moment everything changes." The loading dock, usually bustling with deliveries, was quiet in the late-night gloom. Marcus, feigning a late-night trash run, leaned against a dumpster, phone subtly angled. His heart hammered as he watched Mr. Thorne, dressed in civilian clothes, furtively loading large cardboard boxes into the trunk of his sleek black car. The boxes, unmistakably labeled Grandeur Charity Initiative, contained dozens of hotel-branded toiletries, miniature soaps, shampoos, lotions meant for the less fortunate. Thorne's movements were quick, practiced, but Marcus's phone camera, with a faint, almost imperceptible click, captured every illicit transfer. A cold fury settled in Marcus's chest. This wasn't just skimming tips. This was stealing from the truly needy. The manager is a monster. Now, the undercover son has all the evidence he needs. Back in his cramped staff quarters, the digital evidence glowed on Marcus's laptop screen. Photos and videos of Mr. Thorne's night haul, juxtaposed against the financial spreadsheets detailing missing tip money. The pieces clicked into place, forming a horrifying mosaic of greed. It wasn't just incompetence or petty theft. It was a systematic exploitation, a calculated profiteering from every aspect of the hotel's operations, from the staff's hard-earned tips to the very charity meant for the vulnerable. Marcus closed his laptop, a grim resolve hardening his features. Mr. Thorne wasn't just a corrupt manager. He was a monster. And now, Marcus had all the evidence he needed to expose him. The cleaning staff break room smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Isabella, her face etched with years of quiet endurance, stood before Mr. Thorne, shoulders hunched. A guest had spilled red wine in the lobby, a minor accident. But Mr. Thorne, his voice a low growl, was tearing into her, accusing her of negligence, of being, quote, too old for the job. Elena, wiping down a counter nearby, felt a hot flush creep up her neck. Isabella's eyes, usually so kind, held a glint of fear. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, a familiar drumbeat of fear, but today, something else pulsed stronger. She took a deep breath, her hands clenching. "Excuse me, Mr. Thorne," Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady, though it trembled slightly. The guest, he tripped. Isabella was across the room. It was not her fault. Mr. Thorne's head snapped towards her, his eyes narrowing to slits. His face, usually a mask of superficial charm, reddened with genuine fury. Isabella stared, wide-eyed, a grateful, terrified look in her gaze. Elena stood a little taller, meeting his glare. The next morning, Elena found her name plastered across the staff schedule board, a stark testament to Mr. Thorne's petty tyranny. Her eyes scanned the entries, each one a fresh sting. Overnight deep clean, ballroom, followed by kitchen grease trap detail and laundry room sanitation. No breaks, no relief, just a relentless string of the hotel's most grueling and undesirable tasks. It was a clear punishment for her defiance, an attempt to break her spirit. As she stood there, a heavy sigh escaping her lips, Mr. Thorne glided past, a ghost of a smirk playing on his lips. He didn't say a word, didn't even glance at her, but his silent threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Elena felt a familiar weariness settle deep in her bones, but beneath it, a tiny ember of resolve still flickered. Late that night, in the quiet solitude of his temporary staff quarters, Marcus sat surrounded by the fruits of his relentless investigation. The small room was transformed into a command center. A thick folder, bulging with printouts, lay open on his desk. Screenshots of financial ledgers, meticulously highlighting discrepancies, were arranged beside discrete photos and videos of Mr. Thorne's illicit activities at the loading dock. He'd compiled anonymous staff testimonies, detailing years of abuse and missing tips, carefully disguised to protect their identities. Marcus reviewed each piece, connecting the dots, building a narrative so compelling, so damning, it was irrefutable. His expression was grim, a deep satisfaction warring with the heavy weight of the truths he'd uncovered. Every piece of the puzzle was in place. The manager's downfall was imminent. Midday, in the dim, cluttered cleaning supplies storage room, Elena was reorganizing a chaotic shelf. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of light, filtering through a high window. She pulled out an old, half-empty box of industrial-strength degreaser, and a crumpled piece of paper fluttered to the floor. She bent to pick it up, her fingers brushing against the rough, discarded invoice. Her eyes widened. It was for a massive order of cleaning supplies, dated just 2 weeks prior. The amount listed was staggering, far more than the room currently held, or had ever held. A jolt went through her. This wasn't just a mistake, it was tangible proof. A surge of surprise, then a dawning realization washed over her. It was a shred of evidence, a tiny, defiant spark of hope in the face of so much injustice. The hotel hummed with the quiet rhythm of a sleeping giant, but in Marcus's small quarters, the air crackled with anticipation. It was very late, the city lights a distant blur. He stood, pacing the cramped space, his dossier clutched in his hand. He rehearsed his presentation, the precise order of evidence, the calm, irrefutable logic of his arguments. He wasn't just exposing a corrupt manager. He was reclaiming his family's integrity, restoring dignity to the staff. The weight of it all pressed down on him. The reputation of the grandeur, the justice owed to Elena and Isabella. His determination was absolute, fueled by intellect and a burning sense of right. The undercover bellhop was ready. Tomorrow, the truth would explode. The early morning light barely filtered through the heavy drapes in Eleanor Vance's opulent study, casting long shadows across the antique mahogany desk. Eleanor, the Grandeur's formidable owner, sat with a mug of herbal tea, expecting a routine update from her son Marcus. Instead, Marcus stood before her, not in his usual tailored clothes, but in the slightly rumpled bellhop uniform he'd worn for weeks. He removed the jacket, placing it carefully on a nearby chair, then took the seat opposite her. "Mother," Marcus began, his voice calm but weighted with purpose, "I haven't been training as a bellhop these past weeks." Eleanor's brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion in her sharp eyes. "I've been investigating." He then pushed a thick, meticulously organized dossier across the polished wood. Inside, financial records, spreadsheets, and damning photographs lay neatly arranged. Mr. Thorne has been systematically stealing from the staff and the hotel's charity initiative. Eleanor's gaze dropped to the evidence, her tea forgotten. Her face, usually composed, began to pale. She picked up a photo of Mr. Thorne loading boxes of toiletries into his car, then a printout of doctored tip logs. Her silence was heavy, broken only by the rustle of papers as Marcus detailed the systematic corruption, the exploited cleaning crew, the missing funds, and the stolen donations. Eleanor's initial shock quickly morphed into something far colder, a righteous fury that tightened her jaw. She slammed her hand gently on the desk, the sound echoing in the quiet room. "Thorne!" she hissed, the name a bitter taste on her tongue. "I trusted him. I gave him this hotel, this legacy, and he defiles it by preying on the very people who built it with their sweat." Her eyes, now blazing, met Marcus's. "You, my son, you saw the truth when I was blind. You showed courage and intellect, not just ambition." A fierce pride swelled within her, momentarily eclipsing the betrayal. "This isn't just about money, Marcus. It's about the soul of the grandeur, and Mr. Thorne is about to learn that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed." Her resolve hardened, a queen ready to reclaim her kingdom. Meanwhile, in the polished Art Deco office of the Grandeur Hotel, Mr. Thorne sat at his desk, a smug smile playing on his lips. His phone buzzed. "Yes, send her in," he instructed his assistant, a curt flick of his wrist. Elena Rodriguez had been summoned. "A serious infraction," the message read. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked down the pristine hallway. She clutched her worn cleaning uniform, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. She knew what this meant. Another public dressing down. Another attempt to chip away at her spirit. Mr. Thorne, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, adjusted his tie, preparing for another performance of power and intimidation. He thought he was setting a trap for Elena, not realizing he was walking into one himself. Back in Eleanor's private office at the hotel, the atmosphere crackled with controlled energy. Eleanor, now dressed in a sharp business suit, paced while Marcus meticulously reviewed his evidence on a tablet. "The morning staff meeting," Eleanor stated, her voice firm. "That's where we make our stand. Publicly, irrefutably." She was already on the phone, her words crisp and authoritative. "Yes, Chief. We'll need 2 officers. Quietly, please. And be prepared to move quickly." Marcus, meanwhile, cross-referenced the meeting schedule, ensuring that all key staff, especially the cleaning crew, would be present. Every detail was planned, every piece of evidence timed for maximum impact. The silence between their exchanges was filled with the hum of strategic minds at work, orchestrating the perfect, undeniable downfall. In the dim, sterile cleaning supplies storage room, Elena took a slow, deliberate breath. Her heart still raced, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She was about to face Mr. Thorne, and the thought was a lead weight in her gut. Her fingers found the crumpled invoice she'd discovered, its crisp edges a small, defiant comfort. She squeezed it, a silent prayer for strength, a quiet resolve hardening her gaze. The Grandeur Hotel's conference room buzzed with the nervous energy of the morning staff meeting. At the head of the polished mahogany table, Mr. Thorne held court, his crisp suit a stark contrast to the tired faces of his employees. A projector screen behind him displayed a generic slide-on, operational efficiency. "Some of you," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "seem to believe this hotel runs on wishes. We have budget constraints. We have missing supplies. And frankly, we have a distinct lack of hustle." His gaze, sharp and accusatory, swept across the room, lingering on Elena, especially from certain departments. "Elena, your team's latest performance metrics are disappointing. We need to pick up the pace, not make excuses for lack of resources." Elena, seated near the back with Isabella, kept her head down, her cheeks burning. She felt Isabella's hand squeeze her arm in silent solidarity. From a chair tucked discreetly in the corner, Marcus, still in his bellhop uniform, observed Mr. Thorne. His gaze was steely, his jaw tight. The manager's smug arrogance was a final, bitter pill. He had no idea this was his last act. Just as Mr. Thorne launched into another critique of housekeeping's wastefulness, the heavy conference room doors swung open. Every head snapped towards the sound. Eleanor Vance, owner of the Grandeur Hotel, stood framed in the doorway, her expression grim, her posture radiating an unspoken authority that instantly silenced the room. Mr. Thorne's perfectly coiffed smile faltered, replaced by a look of bewildered shock. His mouth opened, then closed, a stammering sound caught in his throat. "Eleanor," he managed, his voice thin, a stark contrast to his earlier booming tone. A wave of apprehension rippled through the staff. Whispers broke out, quickly hushed. Eleanor Vance rarely attended these operational meetings. Her presence alone shifted the very air in the room, a sudden, chilling realization dawning on everyone that something monumental was about to happen. Eleanor Vance stepped further into the room, her eyes fixed on Mr. Thorne, a silent judgment in their depths. She ignored his stammering, her voice cutting through the tension, quiet but commanding. "Good morning, everyone. I apologize for the interruption, but there are some matters of utmost importance we need to address." Her gaze then shifted, sweeping past the stunned staff, finally settling on Marcus in the back. "And I'd like to introduce you all to someone." She gestured towards him. "This is my son, Marcus Vance, who, for the past few weeks, has been working among you." A collective gasp tore through the room. Elena's eyes widened, her lips parting in utter shock. Mr. Thorne's jaw dropped, his face draining of all color. The blood rushed from his head, leaving him pale and trembling as the realization hit him like a physical blow. The quiet bellhop, the one he'd dismissed, the one he'd ordered around, was the owner's son. Marcus, calm and collected, rose from his seat. He removed his bellhop jacket, revealing a crisp shirt underneath, a symbol of his transition from observer to agent of change. With a click, the generic slide on the projector's screen vanished, replaced by a meticulously organized spreadsheet. For weeks, Marcus began, his voice steady, projecting across the silent room. "I've witnessed a systematic pattern of fraud, theft, and abuse within these walls." He clicked again, and the screen flashed with damning evidence. Financial reports highlighting consistent discrepancies in tip distribution, photos of Mr. Thorne loading boxes of donated toiletries into his personal car, and screenshots of altered inventory logs. The bellhops, tips, the cleaning crew's essential supplies, even the donations meant for local shelters, all systematically siphoned off. And the targeted harassment of dedicated staff, like Elena here, was designed to silence any dissent. Mr. Thorne stammered, his denials weak, drowned out by the horrified murmurs of the staff. Elena, watching from her seat, felt a wave of vindication, a profound, quiet understanding washing over her. As Marcus concluded his damning presentation, Mr. Thorne's bravado completely shattered. He stumbled backward, flailing, his voice cracking into desperate, incoherent protests. This is ridiculous. Lies. You can't prove anything." But his frantic denials were cut short. The conference room door opened once more, and two uniformed police officers stepped inside. Eleanor Vance gave them a silent, affirmative nod. Without a word, the officers moved towards Mr. Thorne, who recoiled, his face a mask of terror. "Wait, you can't. This isn't." The sharp, metallic click of handcuffs snapping around his wrists echoed through the stunned silence. A collective gasp, then a wave of immense relief, washed over the staff. Mr. Thorne, defeated and humiliated, was led away, his protests fading as the door closed behind him. Justice, swift and undeniable, had finally arrived at the Grandeur. The clink of handcuffs faded, followed by the heavy thud of the conference room door closing behind Mr. Thorne. For a long moment, silence reigned, thick with the residue of shock. Then, a collective exhale rippled through the staff, a sound like a dam breaking. Murmurs erupted, quiet at first, then growing into a low hum of disbelief and dawning relief. Staff members exchanged wide-eyed glances, some shaking their heads, others unable to suppress small, tentative smiles. Elena stood rooted, her heart hammering against her ribs, the crumpled invoice still clutched in her hand. Isabella, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, reached for her. Their embrace was silent, a powerful current of shared ordeal and a sudden, overwhelming sense of release. It was over. The suffocating weight of Mr. Thorne's tyranny had been lifted. The empty chair at the head of the table, once a throne of arrogance, now stood as a stark monument to his downfall. Eleanor Vance stepped forward. Her voice, though softer than before, still commanded attention. "I want to express my deepest apologies to all of you," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. "The Grandeur Hotel prides itself on integrity, and it's clear we failed in upholding that standard under Mr. Thorne's management. I take full responsibility for the oversight." Her eyes then settled on Elena, a warmth entering them that Elena had never seen before. "And to you, Elena, I want to say thank you. You have shown remarkable resilience, dedication, and quiet strength. While others sought to undermine you, you simply kept working, kept striving, and in doing so you helped us uncover a truth that needed to be seen." Elena's eyes welled up, a wave of gratitude washing over her as Marcus watched, a proud, knowing glint in his eyes. Her silent struggles, her unseen efforts, were finally acknowledged. Eleanor extended a hand to Elena, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "From today forward, Elena, you are no longer just a cleaner. I am formally offering you the position of assistant housekeeping manager, effective immediately. This comes with a significant raise, full benefits, and the respect you have always deserved." Gasps and quiet applause broke out among the staff. Elena blinked, tears blurring her vision. "Assistant manager?" she whispered, the words feeling foreign and impossibly grand. Eleanor nodded, her smile unwavering. "Yes, Elena. And knowing your ambition, we would also like to fully sponsor your English classes. The Grandeur believes in investing in its people, especially those who show such remarkable drive and intellect." Elena could only nod, a choked sob escaping her. She took Eleanor's outstretched hand, a firm, hopeful grip sealing a new chapter. The room erupted in heartfelt applause, the joyful sound echoing through the reborn hotel. As staff began to disperse, a buzz of excited chatter filling the air, Marcus approached Elena. He offered her a genuine, unburdened smile, no longer the watchful bellhop, but the owner's son. "Elena," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "Thank you. For your strength, for your honesty, for everything." Elena, still wiping away tears, met his gaze. The intimidation was gone, replaced by a profound sense of mutual respect. She returned his smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared fight, of the strategic mind that had brought justice, and of the quiet perseverance that had endured. "Gracias, Mark," she replied, her voice steady now, a new confidence blooming within her. It was a simple exchange, a handshake that held the weight of untold stories, a silent pact for a fairer future. Days later, the Grandeur hummed with a different energy. The aroma of fresh coffee still permeated the air, but the underlying tension had vanished. Elena, now in a crisp new uniform, moved with a newfound confidence through the back-of-house corridors. Her English, though still a work in progress, was stronger, clearer. As she confidently managed her team, her instructions met with respect and efficiency. Marcus observed from his father's old office, now his, seeing a lighter, more collaborative atmosphere among the staff. Eleanor Vance had wasted no time. New policies were swiftly implemented, ensuring fair tip distribution, transparent supply management, and an open-door policy for all employees. The hotel, once a gilded cage for some, was now truly the Grandeur, a testament to the quiet strength of those who persevere and the unwavering power of truth. Justice had not just been served, it had rebuilt.